These are trees that thrive on floods and hold fast in times of drought. Their home is the watercourse and the floodland, their rugged beauty almost a legend. Their scientific name is Eucalyptus camaldulensis, and they're the most widely distributed of all Australian eucalypts. Without interference, they develop into highly individual trees, tough, gnarled and majestic. As such, they're probably the best known and the best loved of all Australian trees. The inspiration of painters, photographers and poets. We prize the River Red Gum for its durability and its appearance. It's a tight-grained timber, deep red and sturdy as railway sleepers, wharf piles, and the stumps of thousands of Australian homes. But long before man took a commercial interest in these trees, they were a world for countless wild creatures. Home, food store, and resting place. At the Victorian State Forest of Barmah, the red gums are managed and harvested. The trunks of immature trees show the watermarks of past winter and spring floods. In the warm, moist conditions that follow the floods, the seeds germinate quickly, so the young saplings grow sufficiently to withstand the hot, dry summer. Any red gum in the Barmah forest might be home to thousands of these busy caterpillars, Uraba lugans, long-haired and irritating to the touch. Because the young caterpillars eat the skin and soft tissue of the leaf, but avoid the tougher veins, they're often called gum skeletonizers. As they grow older, they eat everything right down to the midrib. Uraba carries an elaborate headdress. As it grows, it sheds its skin in a series of moltings, and the old head capsules are stacked one above the other, like so many hoods of a cloak. Although the caterpillars rarely kill trees, they can cause massive defoliation. But finally, the days of feasting are over, and it's time to select a site for the important business of changing from caterpillar to moth. This may be in the litter of old leaves and bark at the base of a tree, or on the tree itself. The old headdress goes into the making of the cocoon, so do the hairs from the Uraba's body. It chews up bark from the tree, for although the red gum is no longer a source of food, it still has a few favors to offer. The bark may serve to strengthen the outer cover. More probably, it's a means of camouflage. As the work goes on, the caterpillar slowly disappears, to become an unobtrusive lump on the trunk of the tree. Another lump on another tree, but hardly unobtrusive. Few families cling together like this group. The larvae of the sawfly. Their common name is spitfires, earned from their habit of exuding a strong-smelling viscous fluid when they're in danger. The fluid consists of undigested eucalyptus oils and is swallowed again after the crisis has passed. The spitfires cling together all day, hardly moving, and when night comes, they set out to feed, still in the same compact group. The leaders tap continually, apparently to keep the cluster together and traveling in the same direction. There are other creatures on the move at night in the red gums. But the spitfires are undisturbed as they reach the leaves on which they'll feed. Here the group disperses, but the tapping continues, a reassuring signal in the dark. The tiny marsupial carnivore of the forest, the tuan. His interests lie elsewhere. Anyway, the spit of the spitfires must be rather intimidating. When the time comes to pupate, the colony prepares for its last convoy. Tapping is used to bring any stray members back to the ranks, and then to get the whole mass on the move. Down to earth they struggle, a few centimetres and then a short rest. Their average speed, about a metre an hour. The spitfires wriggle under the leaf litter and burrow into the soil. Each will now use its protective spit to produce a covering for its body. This will harden to form a casing, inside which it can spin a cocoon. So they form a compact colony from which the adults will emerge. Some 2 or 3 months later, the adults struggle free from their larval chamber, ready to start the next round as sawflies. The sawfly isn't really a fly. It's a four-winged wasp with a remarkable means of laying eggs. Where other wasps might have a sting, it has a tiny saw-like structure which cuts a neat slot in the surface of a leaf, producing blobs of sticky green sawdust. It withdraws the saw, then delicately uses the tip of it to lay an egg inside the cut. So the sawfly moves along the leaf, sawing and laying, sawing and laying. It may labour like this for up to an hour, and in that time lay 20 to 40 eggs. A cutaway section of the leaf shows how neatly and closely the eggs are laid, in a harmony of line that reflects the whole pattern of life of the tiny spitfire caterpillars that will soon emerge. From the outside, the eggs are hidden. A blister on the leaf surface is the only sign of their existence. For the sawfly, the red gum provides the whole basis of existence: hatchery, living space, and source of food. But the natural world rarely gives without taking something in return. The tree also harbours the agents of danger and death. Death for the sawfly can come in the lightning strike of the praying mantis. The forelegs are so constructed that they can be shot forward to trap the prey and hold it until the meal is finished. These mantids are entirely carnivorous. They're among the most efficient of insect predators. In repose, the forelegs give the mantis its characteristic preying appearance. The lethal spikes, which impale the victim, interlock, one row with the other. It's not only members of the animal world that depend on the red gums for survival. Some plants need them too. One of these is mistletoe, found in Australia from the tropics to the southern plains. Mistletoe that makes its home on a eucalypt often imitates the foliage of its host, and may be so demanding that it kills the tree that gives it life. Meanwhile, the mistletoe gives life to the mistletoe bird, in another extraordinary example of the interdependence of living things. The bird will move into an area where the mistletoe berries are ripening, build a delicate purse-like nest, and rear a family on the fruits of the local harvest. The digestive system of the mistletoe birds is such that the seeds in the berries pass quickly through their bodies, while the flesh is held for digestion. The parent bird dumps the droppings on a convenient branch. The seeds are quite undamaged but encased in a sticky substance, so they adhere firmly to the branch, where they'll germinate without the aid of soil or water. The male mistletoe bird, with his distinctive red throat and breast. He also takes part in feeding the family, though this bird, unlike the female, didn't stay to help with the cleaning up. Since the adults have a habit of sitting along a branch when defecating rather than across it, their droppings also usually end up stuck to the tree. So the mistletoe is spread, and the mistletoe bird's own behavior ensures a continuing supply of berries. Sometimes a mistletoe on the River Red Gums is also an element in one of nature's fascinating three-way relationships, one that involves a formidable troop of Camponotus ants and a caterpillar. The Ogyrus caterpillar feeds on mistletoe, and the strange thing is that wherever he goes, he's constantly attended by the Camponotus ants. We still know very little about this form of living together, and believe this film of it to be unique. The link must be based on mutual self-interest. The ants protect the caterpillars against predators, while the caterpillars provide sugary substances which the ants find irresistible. Certainly there's nothing half-hearted about their attention. The ants continually stimulate certain areas of the caterpillar's body with their antennae, and this in turn produces a reaction. The substance that attracts the ants is secreted in a gland in the middle of the back, not in the glands that pop in and out on either side of the body. One theory is that the eggs of some Ogyrus species, and even young caterpillars, are collected by the ants and carried into their nests, and that the ants themselves may be responsible for feeding newly hatched larvae. The older caterpillars feed themselves. At nightfall, they assemble for the march to the mistletoe. It's impossible to know whether the ants are driving them or simply following them. When for some reason a caterpillar is parted from the colony, the ants will go in pursuit and carefully drag the truant back. There's an idea that the ants guide the caterpillars up the trunk and bring them back again. This hasn't been proved, but it is known that the caterpillars lay a silken thread which they later use again. Safely among the mistletoe, the caterpillars start their nocturnal feeding, while the ants continue to dance attendance. At daylight, they'll go down again to their mutual home. Eventually, each of these plodding caterpillars will become a beautiful blue butterfly. Another creature of the night with a sweet tooth, the sugar glider, one of the family of possums able to glide from the top of one tree to the trunk of another. Insects and larvae are an important source of its diet. But the sugar glider also bites into the bark of gum trees to obtain starches and sugars from the sap. In the morning, the sun shines down on the gum leaves, lighting up what appear to be dozens of tiny seashells. These are lerps, shelters for the nymphs or larvae of the psyllid insect. The lerp probably protects the nymph from drying out, It's made from some of the plant starches that the nymph draws from the leaf while it's feeding. The psyllid nymph plunges a feeding tube into a leaf and sucks out the sap, discoloring the leaf and finally killing part of it. Drops of fluid secreted by the nymph harden on the end of the shelter to form a little more lerp. The nymphs grow fast, and sometimes there are population explosions. These may be related to fluctuations between very dry and very wet conditions, which stress the trees and produce an increase of nitrogen in the sap. On the same leaf as the lerp, there are minute brown knobs, each on its own stalk. These are psyllid eggs waiting to hatch the next generation of nymphs. The first and final link in the chain, the adult psyllid, an active flyer and powerful leaper. A common visitor to lerp-encrusted leaves of the red gum is the pardalote, searching for psyllids and other sap-sucking insects. Pardalotes are found only in Australia. This is the striated pardalote, with white stripes marking the head and nape. All pardalotes rely on the tree as a food store. Some species nest in the ground, but others use the tree for shelter as well as food. Red-rumped parrots don't depend on the tree as a source of food, but they too nest in tree hollows. Hollows of the right size occur only in large mature trees, an indication of the importance to wildlife of natural, undisturbed woodlands. Where old trees are removed, even dead trees, the red-rumped parrot, for one, is deprived of a home. It's usually the male who first finds a suitable site and then persuades his mate to take up residence. These parrots feed mainly on grass seeds and herbaceous plants. The splendidly marked king parrot shares a similar diet, but he's also fond of the seeds of eucalypts. One of the most striking and attractive of the host of creatures that feed on the river red gum is the larva of the gum emperor moth. These caterpillars have a voracious appetite. They're storing sustenance now for the months of fasting that lie ahead. In doing so, they make heavy demands on the host tree. Because it's so active by day, the gum emperor caterpillar is a familiar sight. It's easy to recognize with its large green body adorned with spiky coronets of brilliant color. Eventually, its orgy of eating comes to an end. Then suddenly the caterpillar empties its gut in preparation for metamorphosis to the adult stage. Now its torpid appearance suggests it might be dying, but this is only a temporary state. Soon the caterpillar is active again, and together with millions of its kind in the red gum forest, prepares for the intricate and arduous task of making a cocoon. A dramatic change overtakes its body. Vivid green coloring is replaced by a dull pink. Using a basic framework of leaves, the caterpillar secretes silk from its salivary glands. The cocoon has to be built strong enough to be a secure shelter for at least a year, and yet not so resistant that the gum emperor won't be able to cut its way through when ready to emerge as a moth. Liquid silk emerges from the lower lip and hardens at once in contact with the air. As the head weaves backwards and forwards, the whole body is slowly enclosed in a wall of fine threads. The mesh becomes closer, while the threads are impregnated with what looks like a form of brown varnish. The result is a reinforced cocoon, tough and durable. Suppliers of food and providers of shelter, red gums are generous with their favors. Here in Wyperfeld National Park, they furnish support for countless examples of the engineering expertise of the natural world. The webs of the Nephila spider, the golden orb weaver. These spiders produce some of the largest and strongest webs of any species in Australia. The huge webs are miracles of intricate construction, a carefully developed trap of sticky and non-sticky threads supervised from a central platform by the architect herself. The webs of some Nephila spiders are strong enough to catch and hold small birds, but it's insects that come to grief in this silken snare. The spider immobilizes her prey with poison from a gland in the head. She wraps it in a little silk, pulling the strong threads out from the spinnerets at the tip of her abdomen. Enmeshed and helpless, the bee can be carried back to the central platform. Spiders don't chew their prey. They have a digestive system which prevents the intake of solid food. The prey is drenched with salivary fluid before being sucked dry. In this way, the spider's digestive system can be said to operate partly outside the body. The remains of the bee are discarded to join other debris stuck to the web. Then the spider washes up, carefully cleaning special hairs around her mouth. These hairs act as a filter, allowing liquid food to pass, but preventing solid matter entering the pharynx and stomach. Spiders kill vast numbers of insects, but they are themselves rarely far from danger. They can be snatched out of their webs by birds, and they can fall prey to many other forest enemies. Their lives are full of peril, right from the moment they're hatched in a silken cocoon. A Nephila prepares to lay her eggs. It's an elaborate procedure that first involves spinning a silk platform. The eggs are laid against this. Working relentlessly, she presses the tip of her abdomen against the platform, drawing out the silk with her back legs and pushing it into place. At last, satisfied with the result, she lies still for a moment before her body is convulsed with a series of spasms. Each time she pulls back, more eggs are drawn out of her abdomen, until what looks like a pile of pink tapioca adheres to the silk. After the eggs are laid, she has one more task: to spin more silk to envelop the cluster in a cocoon. When that is finished, the eggs and the young spiderlings they'll produce are on their own. The exhausted and depleted mother leaves them to their fate. At sunset in Wipperfeld National Park, the galahs perform their evening aerobatics, and an unseen army of Nephila spiders gets ready for the night's work. For it's at night that they repair and maintain their webs. Unlike some spiders, Nephila tries to keep the same web, which is a fragile framework for all its perfection of design and construction. Sometimes it'll be broken beyond repair and will need to be rebuilt. But more often the outer frame will remain intact, and Nephila only has to rebuild the damaged inner area. This she does patiently and precisely, using her legs and the swing of her body to determine the measurements. With the dry radial spokes in position, she spins the sticky cross thread which will spiral in towards the central platform. At last, the repaired web comes together, as perfect and as lethal as ever. Life and death, flood and drought. The River Red Gum has presided over them all for thousands of years. Whether it'll survive the activities of man is another matter. Man needs water for his cities and farms, so he manages the rivers and controls their flooding. But it is this flooding that means life to the River Red Gum. At Wipperfeld National Park, a great area has been set aside for conservation. But floods here are less frequent than in the past, and even these great trees are likely to be lost if their need for water is not met. So balance has to be achieved between the needs of man and the needs of his environment. This is a balance that we have to find if we're to assure the survival of the majestic River Red Gum and the intricate structure of living things for which it is the world.